to do the laundry and cook 5 meals and whatever. Because I remember a story of my mother tells all the time. When I was a senior in high school, my grandparents came to visit. My grandfather grew up in a depression on a farm, blah, blah, blah. Sweetest man in the world, never in the world said a bad word about me or my mother ever. Just a wonderful person. And I got up from the dinner table, senior in high school, to go off to do my 5 hours of, AP history, physics 2, and whatever homework I had. And my grandfather came up to my mother and said, don't you think she should help you with the dishes? And I've noticed she's not helping with the housework. My mother, a child of her generation, was shocked, and was like, no, she will not need here. She has bigger things. And when I heard it now, and really I kind of wish that I had learned how to do more. But I mean, it was a real generational shift, and I felt that my mother, again, was very apolitical, would certainly not consider herself a feminist, but she grew up in the 60s and definitely was very proud that I was going to Princeton, that opportunities that she didn't have. I was going to be a lawyer, all those things. When I got pregnant in law school, she's the world's best grandmother and best mother, and that's her life. And I would never. She's just wonderful. But I can remember the catch in her voice when I called from law school and said, "Guess what? I'm pregnant." And she went, just this, and I can still remember that. And these sort of dreams, and it wasn't so much. It was just this idea of a generation before us. And we had never, I always just assumed I was going to be, doctor, lawyer, Union chief, whatever, plus have a family, plus have it all. And there was that kind of pressure, I think. But I think that having said all that, life happens. And it's wonderful. You take this, it comes in, you live through it, and it's not something to feel bad about. It's fun, it's great,
Well, Shanti, I guess I'm trying to interpret your question a little more. So are you saying that, did we feel pressures to become professional women as opposed to stay-at-home women?
Yeah,
in other words,
sure.
Are you saying, say if I had wanted to be a stay-at-home woman, would I have felt out of sorts?
Yeah, especially during your undergraduate career, there's so much. You're such a bright mind. We're grooming you for these sorts of goals.
I can see. I personally, maybe I'm not most apt to answer this question, but I can see how somebody would feel that if they wanted to see their Princeton years as a wonderful time in their life, but they wanted to dedicate themselves to being a full-time stay-at-home mother. I can see how they would feel a pressure from this environment. But as soon as you go out into the world, the whole Martha Stewart ethos awaits you. I wouldn't say that all of America is this way. In other words, there's a very strong tradition. Think about the Food Network. Think about so many things in our society right now that are really elevating and celebrating a lot of aspects of the homemaker. So I'm not sure that Princeton is necessarily going to determine the pressures you feel in this regard.
I know that what you're saying about those pressures, I remember when I was in high school attending a conference that was about teaching. And would you consider teaching? And they're trying to get the brightest kids teaching. And so that's where I first sort of thought about it there and why I hadn't considered teaching. But you always got from your teachers when you were the brightest kid, they wanted you to go out and do something with it. They didn't want you to be a teacher. So as though there was something wrong with it, but you know what I'm saying. And that, so just as Kim says, your parents here, they put you through this great school, they paid for it, they made great sacrifices. Maybe they wanted you to go out and, set the world on fire, be a senator, be the president. And so, yeah, I do feel, where Kim says she used to sort of get that from her parents, I definitely felt that from the teachers that I got here, and that is also part of why I, in just a few comments I had at the beginning, that I said I wanted to state clearly and unequivocally, it is not a waste of your education for you to stay home and educate your children. You have these young minds, and if you think about it, if you're running off to work, with whom are you leaving your kids? Are you looking to leave them with somebody who's really going to shape their minds? Yes, you're trying to leave, if you're going to make that sacrifice and go and work, which is fine, and everybody has to go through their own financial analysis and whether they have the luxury to stay at home or not. But yeah, if you're not taking care of them, you're trying to find the best person for the job. So when you're trying to find the best person for the job and all of a sudden you look around and you're like, hey, actually I'm the best person for the job. You're not wasting it. And as I said, if you've done a good job, all along the lines, you'll have no problem stepping back into your career. And you'll also find, at least it's been my experience, that it has been really rejuvenating. There's been a lot that I've learned. I didn't know anything about the late Cretaceous, early Cretaceous, the Eocene epoch, and now I can, talk natural history with you, all these different things that I've learned from the kids that, I didn't study. And that in having to teach it to them, I've had to learn it. So I felt the pressure. I still feel it now. I'm proud to stay at home and to go and tell other moms, to validate it, and even to waive the Princeton degree and say, listen, I got this Princeton degree and I'm staying at home. Don't you feel badly about it?
In Bethesda, you can't go 2 minutes without running into somebody who's, discovered a fifth form of matter or something else. It's true, they're all
Yeah. No, I think that's so true, and I think it took me too long to realize it. I think it was this, not so much from Princeton or even from family, but this self-inflicted pressure that to really make something of myself, and then this idea that I'm spending my days changing diapers and feeding children and cleaning the same house in the same way day after day after day, and it felt like a waste of my talents and my education, and sort of rebelled against it, and instead of enjoying it and giving it all that I could, I became embittered about it for a few years. Because I didn't have that perspective. And so I think starting with that perspective that, no, nurturing some small children is a wonderful use of your education, and we'll use more of it than you can possibly imagine. It's a really good perspective to start.
So I guess we have a few minutes for questions from the audience.
So I was wondering, you all sort of mentioned how, you sit down and talk with your husbands when you have to make decisions, or your husbands will be home when the kids get home, or you make these different arrangements. And I was wondering if you've found in your experience that when your husband is trying to work out things with his employer, an arrangement that's more family friendly, if he has a more difficult time than you, because are there these expectations in the workplace that women they're going to be taking care of the kids, and if the husband wants to help, then what is that? Or does that have an effect on how you can make decisions on how you're going to?
I think it's more, I don't need to jump in, but I think it's, at least in our experience, it's more self-inflicted than otherwise. And I noticed this, sort of as we had, it's like this, you talk about women and hormones, it was this, when we started having our family, David, my philosophy professor husband, also was like, and I think we should go to law school, and we got a mortgage, and all of a sudden, this sort of breadwinner provider thing came out that I had never, before we were living in Berkeley, and, living up later tonight, it was just, and then, all of a sudden, he was very much, that kind of came out in him, and so, when I say that, I mean that he is very aware of, the 6 children we